All right, close your eyes for just a second. Well, unless you're walking or driving, obviously. Think about the great unexplored frontiers. We almost always picture the crushing pitch black depths of the ocean, or maybe the vast freezing expanse of deep space. But what if I told you that the absolute ultimate, most mysterious, and wildly unpredictable frontier isn't actually out there at all? It's literally right behind your eyes. Today, we're cracking the cheat codes to the human mind. We're going on an inward odyssey. Just take a second to really marvel at the sheer scale of the cosmos sitting right there inside your own skull. Harvard astronomer Owen Gingerich spent his entire life gazing into the distant horizons of the universe, tracking galaxies and supernovas. And yet even he acknowledged this completely staggering truth. Excluding other human minds, your mind is the most complex physical object in the entire cosmos that we currently know about. It's not just some biological machine, it's an absolute marvel. And the rules that actually govern it, they are incredibly elusive. I mean, we all get to just have one of these impossibly complex objects knocking around up in our heads, and yet we barely even understand how it operates. Which plunges us straight into the philosophical deep end. Think about your own life for a minute. Think about that extremely weird dream you had last night, or those times you just blurted something out that you absolutely knew you shouldn't have said. Or even better, that thing you didn't even know you were going to say until it was already out of your mouth. The little cogs of your consciousness are constantly cranking away, making your entire life possible. But who is actually turning the crank? Are you truly in the driver's seat with total free will? Or are you just being driven by your environment, your biology, and all these invisible, non-conscious influences? Look, if you ever feel like you're just running on autopilot, trust me, you are definitely not alone. So let's dive into Section 1, Searching for the Soul. You know, the word psychology actually translates to the study of the soul. And for centuries, humanity has been desperately trying to map this completely unmappable territory. Look back at ancient Greece. The brilliant Aristotle pondered the seat of human consciousness, and, well, he decided it was in the heart. Now, he was absolutely and completely wrong, but you kind of have to appreciate the poetry of it, right? Fast forward to 1879 in Germany, and we meet a physician named Wilhelm Wundt. Wundt watched chemists breaking down physical matter into simple elements, and he thought, hey, why couldn't we do the exact same thing for the brain? So he created structuralism. He tried to understand the actual structures of consciousness by asking people to look inward and report exactly how they felt when they, say, smelled coffee or watched a sunset. It was highly subjective for sure, but it was the very first real attempt to put the soul under a microscope. Now, Wundt definitely wasn't operating in a vacuum. If we trace the evolution of this science, what we actually see is this massive global relay race of early thinkers who acted as the very first cartographers of the human experience. We aren't going to get bogged down in a bunch of dry dates here, but just look at the sweep of this history. I mean, 2,000 years ago, Chinese rulers were already conducting the world's first psychological exams on public officials. In the late 800s in Baghdad, the Persian Dr. Rhazes was essentially running an early psych ward. And then by 1890, the American philosopher William James shifted the entire focus. Instead of just asking what the mind is made of, James started asking why we think and feel. He looked at the adaptive purpose of our behavior, an approach he called functionalism. Humanity was rapidly closing in on the mind's secrets. Which brings us to Section 2, the invisible demons. But as it turns out, the mind wasn't quite ready to give up all of its secrets just yet. To truly understand our own consciousness, scientists had to step way down into the shadowy, basement-level realm of the unconscious. In the year 1900, Sigmund Freud introduced a concept that was, honestly, absolutely terrifying and utterly revolutionary. I'm talking about his theory of psychoanalysis. Now, Freud is a wildly controversial figure. People vehemently disagreed with him back then, and they still do today. But his radical kernel of an idea completely shook the world. He suggested that our personalities are profoundly shaped by unconscious motives. Freud was essentially saying that we are being driven by invisible demons hiding right there in our own mental shadows. The idea that your own mind could be controlled by something that you yourself weren't even completely aware of, that was incredibly hard for people to grasp. It felt abstract, it felt totally irrational, because it basically meant you weren't the sole master of your own house. But the crucial thing is, Freud didn't just point out that dark basement. He actually handed us a flashlight. He theorized that this invisible, unconscious realm was actually discoverable by using specific tools. Things like analyzing your dreams, looking at your projections, and using free association, where you just speak freely about whatever comes to mind without filtering a single thing. You could root out those repressed feelings. Freud actually learned this from witnessing a colleague treat a patient named Anna O. By just letting her talk and pull up these deep, traumatic memories, her physical symptoms actually reduced. He called it the talking cure, and it literally dragged those invisible demons right out into the light. We really cannot overstate the monumental real-world shift this brought to human history. Before this breakthrough, think about what happened to people struggling with severe mental disorders. They were locked away in sanitariums. At best, they were given menial labor. At worst, they were literally shackled to bed frames. Freud's wild assertion that mental disorders could actually be healed through talk therapy and self-discovery, it replaced those physical iron shackles with the liberating power of self-insight. It was an absolute paradigm shift in human empathy and medical science. And that leads us perfectly into Section 3, your unbreakable mental sanctum. Now, let's pull this right back to you. Why are we even talking about 19th century German laboratories and Victorian-era talking cures? Well, because this isn't just some boring vocabulary list you have to memorize. It's an integrated melting pot of cheat codes. The human mind is way too complicated to be cracked open by just one single method. It has to be pried at from all sides. Wundt gives you the cheat code to look inward at your own subjective feelings. James gives you the code to understand the adaptive purpose behind why you act a certain way. Freud offers the code to unlock the hidden motives buried deep in your past. And later on, folks like B.F. Skinner ushered in behaviorism, giving us the code to study how our observable actions are conditioned by our environment. When you combine all of these together, you aren't just learning psychology, you're actually acquiring the tools to decode yourself. And that brings us to the absolute ultimate goal here. Look, life is chaotic. Growing up, facing academic pressure, figuring out who you really are, navigating relationships, it's a massive amount of stress. But when you start to understand exactly how your brain works, how it can break, how it can heal, and why you behave the way you do even when you don't really want to, you start to build genuine mental autonomy. You build an unbreakable mental sanctum. You literally move from being a mere passenger in your own mind to sitting firmly behind the steering wheel. So I'm going to leave you with this one thought. We have this absolutely incredible cosmos sitting inside our skulls, filled with both phenomenal power and hidden shadows. The cartographers of the past have handed down their maps. They've given us the cheat codes. The only question left is, are you ready to take control of your own mind? Because this inward odyssey, it's really just beginning. Think about that as you go about your week, and I will see you in the next explainer.